Hello, everyone. So with me today is Shahzeb. Shahzeb, thank you very much for taking out the time and speaking with us about the topic that we have been trying to discuss with someone as experienced as you for quite some time. So welcome to Better Tech. We can start with a quick introduction about yourself. So why don't you go ahead and tell us more about you?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Haseeb, for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. So myself, I'm Shahzeb. I am the Global Head of Transport as a Service and Software as a Service business at Swvl. Swvl is a mass transportation platform that reimagines public and private mobility networks across the globe. The piece that I look after is essentially the piece where we reimagine mass transportation for corporates, schools, universities, transport operators, and the governments, which are the transit agencies. Prior to Swvl, I used to be at Careem for a few years. I started out of Pakistan. 6 months I was Lahore. 6 months I was launching tier two cities there. Post which I took more of a national role before I decided to jump ships and move to Swvl in Egypt.
All right. That sounds pretty exciting journey, I would say. And during this time, I mean, you would have been involved with setting up teams of various sizes, various scales, and various skill set as well. And so, would you tell us a bit more about that? What was your approach to manage or set up teams?
Yep. No, that's actually a very important and fundamental part of really setting up an organization, right? It depends on what stage of the organization is it at, right? So how we start always is, because I've also launched a lot of markets, you don't really need super highly qualified, etc. Individuals to come and join your rocket ship in the first early days. Yeah. In the early days, you really need people who have the drive, who are young, energetic, and who will break the walls to get things done, because that's what, and you need the right, all they require from you is the right guidance. So then as you grow within the organization, the people who hopped on early on, a certain portion of them really kind of evaluate themselves and grow themselves up to kind of take bigger and bigger roles within the organization. But with every stage of the organization, let's say there's a launch stage, and there's a growth stage, then there's a maturity stage, there's a certain skill set that you really need to start bringing in from outside, of course, together with giving people internally the chance to grow and to take those positions as first. So it really depends on the stage of this organization. But while we hire, I think there is one very important and the key fundamentals that we look at when we bring people on board, which we never compromise on, is our cultural values. Right. So there's a DNA of our organization, and in that DNA, anyone and everyone that comes on it, it's a welcome on board kind of a culture and the strategy.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. And when you touched upon your introduction, you mentioned transport as a service, and then you also talk about software as a service. So, I mean, primarily there is going to be a difference among the two. If you are offering a platform which actually caters to transportation, right, as a service, then maybe that falls under that category. But are there any other differences between the two, or how do you divide them?
Yep. So that's a very interesting question, actually, and thank you. So transportation as a service essentially is our full suite of products, right? So essentially, this involves the software. This also involves the fleet from the marketplace, the suppliers that we bring in. This also involves the managed services. When we say transport as a service is a holistic product that we kind of sell to governments, to schools, to universities, where they want to outsource everything end to end. While on the other hand, software as a service is a piece which, let's say there is a customers, they already own their assets, they already own their vehicles, they don't want vehicles from outside, but what they really want is the software to help them optimize their networks, their mobility networks. This is where we provide software only. So this is how the two kind of differ. The clientele is the same, but the customer persona's problem statement can differ, and basis that problem statement, these are the two types of products that we really offer.
So okay, so within your organization, if you are sort of doing that in terms of having your own fleet and everything, right? Then you are basically managing that from an overall perspective, right? So where you have your own
So we
fleet.
don't own fleet. We don't own, when I say fleet or when I say supply, we are a marketplace, right? So let's say if a corporate or a school wants it, the supply and the fleet as well, through our marketplace, we bring in the suppliers, the individual captains who we put, and we plug the software on top of it, and we package it to take it to them. We, at the end of the day, are always a technology platform. We are an asset-light model.
Sure. That sounds good. So, and within these domains, you would have like set up multiple teams and give them autonomy as well. So, what do you think having a team and then giving them the autonomy that they need is actually important?
Oh, 100%. Man, I think the world in which we are running, and I'm sure you would know this more than myself, is every day there are new types of problems, right? So someone who has had 20 years of experience, you bring them in, the problem statement at hand is something that has not really been solved across the globe, right? There are 200 countries in the world, 170 run unsustainable mass transportation. So we have actually taken a problem statement which hasn't really been solved across ever, right? So at this point, all you really need is people who are problem solvers, people who are super structured in terms of problem solving. And there are some basics that you really need to look at. Post that, it's mainly about two things, right? It's about purpose. Millennials, Gen Z, the new workforce that is really coming in, they are all driven by purpose. They are driven by a shared vision, which I believe is one of the most and the biggest and the most important piece of building and scaling any organization. You can do great things, but if you don't have a purpose behind it, the why of it, that's a big reason why a lot of the organizations don't scale as fast. Then let's say if you have a purpose, you also need to have a shared vision, right? It can't be that someone who is doing customer support versus someone who's doing supply acquisition, they share completely different vision of what the organization needs to be. So as leadership, it's very important to make sure that the dots are always connected for people to start making sense. And then, like I already mentioned, is the DNA. The DNA is your culture and your values. You need to make sure that the people that you bring in are a great embodiment of your culture, of your values. If you have these three things sorted, you don't need people from 20, 30, 50 years of experience. All you need people is who are great hustlers, problem solvers, and who can make their way and who can break the walls.
Right. And another key question, or I mean, a key thought which you would like to share is about your suggestion for, or maybe about your comment on retaining the founding team. So what
Yeah, no,
challenges?
100. I think that's a very, very important question as well. So the founding team really is the one that sets up that base, right? And a lot of the times, I mean, today, if you join an organization, the level of learning, that's number one, that you get as part of the founding team is not what you get when you go into a more structured organization, right? So I've been constantly, and I've really personally went through the whole journey, first at Careem and now going through the same journey at Swvl. So the first piece is the learning part, right? You really learn how to build an organization ground up. Then on top of it, it is very important to incentivize the founding team in the right way, because they are taking the leap of faith on the future of this organization, on what it could be, not what it is today, right? So of course, the incentive structure, the stock options, the equity structure is something that really drives the founding team to kind of make sure that they are going in a direction which brings together both pieces, personal growth and of course professional and the financial growth as well.
Right. And in your opinion, if you are a part of a founding team, you basically onboard more people, right? And when you onboard more people, then as a founding team member, you basically want them to have the same vision as you have, or the leap of faith that you have taken, you want them to do the same, right? So they need to think in the same dimension. How you have been communicating this vision to the team who was associated with you directly? How open was the communication? What were the challenges?
Yep. No, thank you so much. So one of our core values is we are co-founders. That's our number one value. So it's not about founding team only. It's about every single person in this organization. because the idea of ownership is something that really puts a different mindset into people. It kind of makes people believe and deliver to a levels that you and I will be super shocked about, right?
Mhm.
So as part of this first value that we have, which is co-founder, being a co-founder, this really means that decision making is not centralized. Decision making is decentralized. Of course, as the organization grows, you cannot just have 500 people in the same room making a decision. At a different levels, these decision making is not done by one person. The
Mm.
decision making is done by a team. So again, as we scaled and as we grew, the founding team at each layer was equally involved in making that decision. This is how you really feel the purpose and you feel accountable for it. And you also start to learn a lot more. Another value that kind of goes right next to this for us is that we fail fast, right? So it's okay, we need to make a decision, but we need to make a decision with an 80-20 rule to a certain point. Okay, even if we fail, it's fine, we learn. Next mistakes that we will do, we will make sure the ones that we've done in the past, we're not going to repeat, right? And
Sure.
that's how iterative we run.
Right. And in this new area, or not area exactly, but in this new age of COVID, right? Remote work has become a norm, right? More and more people are working remotely. So, what sort of challenges do you think are there in remote working, and how you keep your team engaged in this scenario?
So well, remote working honestly is something that is of course need of the hour, right? With COVID coming in, this is something that has told all of us that there's a world in like things can also happen at scale even if you're working remotely. So some of the challenges that we faced was really communication, right? When you have someone in Egypt versus someone in Pakistan versus someone in Kenya versus someone in Barcelona, everybody coming together, there are sometimes cultural nuances that really need to be taken care of, and that can only be solved with generally when there's no remote working there, those are generally solved by having offsites, by having people integrate really well. But when it came to remote working, we just didn't put things where people are working together only for work. We started putting in some extracurricular, some extra activities where people could come together, people could do a book club, for example, people could do yoga and so on and so forth. So everybody would go and read a book, and different teams would come together and talk about it. We really saw people evolving by themselves, right? As an organization, I mean, of course, as a startup that is running really, really fast, there's not everything that we are able to do at the same time. So people, they started evolving, and we started seeing these different groups of people coming together online, talking about mental health, talking about what are the things that we really like. For example, like I mentioned, book club. So things like that kind of started coming together. But honestly, if you ask me personally, I'm not a fan of remote working. I don't think there's a lot that gets done while you are together into an office, or while you are meeting, let's say every 3 months for once in an offsite. There's so much more that can happen than the things that are happening remotely. Engineering is something that we have seen works really, really well when it comes to remote working. But when it comes to more business functions, more ideas, innovative ideas, and thinking that needs to go on, that's something that we struggle in the start.
Right, right. And now towards the end, I mean, a key question that a lot of people would like to hear is that you gave example of two great companies, Careem and Swvl, where you are right now, right? So you have been part of the journey of both the companies. So what sort of a cultural difference you have seen among the DNA of the two companies? What was the working style difference? The founders, I mean, what's their working style in both the companies? Do they share the same DNA? It's different. So if you would like to share something on that.
100%. That's actually a very, very interesting question. And that's something that I speak about quite a lot, the differences between Careem and Swvl. I'll tell you first what the things that are similar, right? Careem and Swvl, they are both purpose and mission driven, right? Because both of them are solving a problem statement which is massive in size, and it's a problem statement that touches lives and improves lives every day. So on that level,
it's basically a real world problem.
it's a real world problem. It's not like we are going and selling soaps or toothbrush, right? It's more of a problem statement that you can deliver a value to right away, right? And you see instant gratification when you see someone taking a ride in the markets in which we are, where women's safety is such a massive problem. When you see women, so many women taking rides and giving you such massive, amazing feedback, this really kind of resonates. So this is one. Now, in terms of work styles, I think both are driven differently. With Careem, it was more of something for the region, a lot more purpose, a lot more getting people running by having this bigger idea of there is something that someone has done in the past. Let's say there was Uber doing it in US. There were some companies, Didi, doing it in China.
I would say Lyft was
Yes.
there as well. Yeah.
Yes, the conversation was more on how can we do the same here and why can't we do the same here, right? So it was more of a regional thing. Versus at Swvl, it's a completely different world. Swvl is a very ambitious. I feel the ambitious of Swvl is a lot more, even more than we used to have at Careem. And the biggest reason why Swvl's ambitions is a lot more is because this problem statement is not the problem statement that has been solved anywhere in the world. It's not like we can say there is someone like Swvl in Europe who has already done it. There's a lot of learnings that we can do and we can take and we can scale much faster only in this region. Swvl is more of a global play. And with you being, and now that we have also gone IPO, I mean, we haven't gone IPO yet. We are going hopefully in at the end of the year. At that time, it kind of really feels like Swvl is an organization that is a lot more ambitious and a lot more driven on making sure that we change the world for better across. From a founder's perspective, again, with ambition, there's a lot. Swvl is a lot fast, super fast in terms of iteration, super fast in terms of turnaround, super fast in terms of making sure there's one core value that we have is today, not tomorrow, right? And that is something that I felt is really different. It can be good and bad. Sometimes it tires you. But if you're really driven by purpose and mission, that's something that also really keeps you going. So that's that piece. Careem was a completely different story and it was magical. It was magical in terms of how people came together for one common vision. People came together to give back to the region, to give back to the society, to make sure that whatever we are so privileged and we have been into, like we've had the chance to kind of build companies like this from scratch. How do we make sure that we build an institution that lasts forever, that can generate the next layer of entrepreneurs, next layer of problem solvers, innovators, and so on and so forth. So they both are really very different in that case, but very similar in the purpose and the mission part.
Right. I think that's pretty good because many people will actually know the difference, which I think you have laid out pretty well. So, I mean, now we can conclude. And in the end, if you would like to give any message to the young people out there to proceed and make a difference, what would you say?
I would say, guys, don't settle. I think the only things are only difficult if we can't dream. I think we should dream a lot more. We should imagine a lot more. And if we don't settle, we'll make it. And now when you wake up, you'll see a lot of those examples right next to you. So keep dreaming and never settle.
All right, so awesome. So Shahzeb, in the end, I would like to thank you for making up the time for our listeners today at Better Tech, and I hope to host you sometime soon again with a different topic.
Perfect, amazing. Thank you so much, Haseeb. Thank you so much for your time.